Welcome. Earlier this year we did a four-part series on the tax obligations of U.S. persons abroad. It was a four-part series that focused on the income tax obligations of U.S. persons abroad, the FBAR, estate and gift taxes, and finally, how to get into compliance in the event that you've been non-compliant. Well, in June of this year, 2014, the IRS made substantial changes to how to get back into compliance in the event that you have not been compliant. So we're redoing the fourth part of that series to cover these new IRS rules and give you information on how to get back into compliance in the event you haven't been. If you have questions about the income tax, the FBAR, or estate and gift taxes, I'd recommend watching the first three parts of our series that can be found on our YouTube channel where you found this presentation. I give speeches all over the world to groups of Americans and try to educate them on this topic of what their tax obligations are. And inevitably, I always get asked the question, oh my God, what do? I haven't been filing my taxes, I haven't done my FBAR, I haven't reported my foreign entities. What do I do? Am I going to have to pay a penalty? Am I going to go to jail? And how is the U.S. even going to find out that I have these foreign assets? Well, the information the IRS will get through FATCA, the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act. So it was legislation passed in 2010 that requires foreign banks to turn over account information on U.S. taxpayers to the IRS. So the foreign banks are going to start turning over information on U.S. taxpayers with foreign accounts in March of next year. So if you're not in compliance, now's the time to get into compliance. The first program we're going to talk about is the Offshore Voluntary Disclosure Program. The Offshore Voluntary Disclosure Program is the first of the 5 programs that we'll talk about for getting back into compliance. To be eligible, the funds invested in the foreign account have to have been legal funds. That means that they weren't derived from criminal activity like money laundering, drug money, or something of that nature. You also can't have made a submission under the Streamlined compliance procedures, which we'll talk about next. And you can't be under civil or criminal examination by the IRS. Provided you meet those criteria, the requirements of the Offshore Voluntary Disclosure Program require the filing or amendment of 8 years tax returns, file an amendment of 8 years FBARs. You have to pay all back taxes, interest, and penalties, and pay a 27.5% to 50% penalty on the highest value of the assets you failed to report over the last 8 years. I know that sounds like it's a lot of money, and it is, but it's certainly better than the alternative of jail or the penalties that are available to the IRS outside of the Offshore Voluntary Disclosure Program. The OVDP program is generally used by people who knew that they were supposed to be reporting and intentionally weren't. So you might be saying, you know what, that's not me. I didn't know I was supposed to be reporting. If that's the case, let's talk about the Streamlined Foreign Offshore Procedure. This is designed for Americans abroad that failed to file, failed to comply due to non-willful conduct. Non-willful conduct is basically, I didn't know, it was inadvertent negligence. So to be eligible for the Streamlined Foreign Offshore Procedure, the failure has to be non-willful, like I mentioned. You have to meet a non-residency requirement. That means in one of the last 3 years, you have to have been outside of the U.S. for 330 days or more. You have to have failed to report income from a foreign financial asset. And you can't be under IRS criminal or civil investigation in order to take part in this program. The requirements are much less than that of the OVDP program. You only have to file or amend your last 3 years tax returns and 6 years worth of FBARs. Pay any back taxes and interest, but no penalty. And there's also no penalty based on the value of your assets. So for people living abroad, this is a fantastic way to get back into compliance. There's also a streamlined domestic offshore procedure for those taxpayers living in the United States whose conduct was non-willful. To be eligible for this program, like I mentioned, the failure has to be non-willful. So it was inadvertent, it was due to negligence. Basically, it wasn't done on purpose, the non-compliance. You cannot have been a non-resident, meaning that you cannot have been outside of the U.S. for more than 330 days in one of the last 3 years. Otherwise, you'd have to take advantage of the Streamlined Foreign Offshore Procedure. You must have filed your last 3 years tax returns in order to take part in this program, and you must have failed to report income associated with a foreign financial asset and not be under investigation by the IRS. The requirements are almost the same as the foreign offshore procedure. That is, you have to amend your last 3 years' tax returns, file or amend your last 6 years' FBARs, sign a certification that your failure to comply was non-willful, and pay a 5% penalty based on the value of the unreported assets over the last 6 years. That's certainly better than the 27.5% or 50% that comes with the OVDP program. Now we're going to talk about the delinquent FBAR submission procedure. So this is a good option for those people who reported all the income from their foreign accounts, they paid all the taxes on it, they just didn't know they were supposed to file an FBAR. So provided you've paid all the tax on your foreign income, reported all the income, you've not filed FBARs, you're not under investigation by the IRS, and you have not been contacted by the IRS regarding your failure to file an FBAR, you can utilize this procedure. Basically, all it requires is file the delinquent FBARs, include a statement explaining why you failed to file them, and there's no penalty. Finally, we're going to talk about the Delinquent International Information Return Submission Procedure. U.S. taxpayers are required to report foreign entities that they're involved with, and those are called information returns. If you've failed to file those, then this option may be a viable option for you. In order to be eligible for this program, you have to have failed to file the international information returns. You have to have reasonable cause for failing to file those information returns, not be under investigation by the IRS, and have not been contacted by the IRS regarding your failure to file the information returns. If you meet those criteria, then all you have to do is amend your tax returns to include the foreign information returns, attach a statement of reasonable cause explaining why you failed to file the information returns, and there's no penalty. You're done. I'd like to thank you for joining us today. I hope this information has been useful to you. If you're not in compliance with your U.S. taxes, I've given you a lot of options for getting back into compliance. I suggest you take advantage of them. Thank you.